I'm Jim Collison and live from Omaha, Nebraska in the Gallup offices in Sydney, Australia. This is Gallup's Call to Coach, recorded on October 20th, 2015. Call to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you have questions during this live webcast, we do have a live chat room that's available for you. It's right below the main video window, and actually we have a couple people in there right now. Just log into that. There's a box in the lower left-hand corner that says log in. Give us your guest. Log in as a guest. Give us your name. We'd love to have you log in with us, and that is available for you. If you're listening to the recorded version or have questions about custom strengths coaching solutions for small, medium, or large organizations, send us an email, coaching@gallup.com, or you can use the contact form that's right there on the live page. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center. That's just GallupStrengthsCenter.com. For all your coaching resources and StrengthsFinder training needs, you can also catch the video in both downloadable and both video and audio for you both on our page. If you want to listen to this offline, recapture that time on a train, in a plane, or in a car, it's a great way to do that. We have everything available, as well as our top 5 mobile apps that are available now for you. All this is for free, by the way. Coaching.gallup.com. Ann Lingenfelter is our host today and works as a learning solutions consultant with our Gallup office in Sydney, Australia. And Ann, great to see. I feel like I just saw you, and it's because I did. And welcome back to another Call to Coach.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. It's great to be back. It's a very big day in Sydney today, not only because we have Charlotte Blair here on Call to Coach, but we actually are hosting Paul Allen here for the next few days. And I know this is a sore spot for you, Jim, because you would really like to be here.
I would. Someday I'll grow up as a strengths evangelist, and I'll be able to visit Sydney, Australia.
We're very excited to have Paul here, and we have lots of activities on for him, so we'll have to talk about that next time we see you. But today, the spotlight is on Charlotte Blair, and Charlotte is a Gallup-Certified Strengths Coach. She is a founding partner of the Strengths Partners, which is a company that is dedicated to strengths-based development. It happens to be based in Melbourne, in Victoria, here in Australia. And Charlotte got certified, I think, about 2014. And not long after that, she left the communications company that she was working for, and she went out and started the Strengths Partner. So, Charlotte, welcome to Call to Coach.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here. I've been counting down the days on my calendar, not only to come up and do the Call to Coach, but to meet Paul and all the other strengths coaches as well.
Yeah. Fantastic. I often tell people about you, Charlotte, because I think it's a very powerful story that you, together with some of your, and tell me if I get this wrong, but my understanding is together with some of your colleagues from your cohort for the Accelerated Strengths course, you guys came together to form the Strengths Partner. Is that right?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct. So you're right. I attended the Gallup course in February 2014, and Carmaine, Sue, and I used to sort of meet up. We were 3 of the sort of people on the course from Melbourne, so we'd meet up on a regular basis and kind of have a chat about what we were doing. And sort of Carmaine and I in particular were getting a little bit frustrated that we weren't using it in real earnest, and we kind of had a discussion over a glass of wine and went, well, should we set up together? And the rest is history. So
how long between when you got certified until you made that big step? Because I think there's a lot of coaches out there that get certified. Some may wonder, should I go at it on my own, or should I collaborate and find some complementary partnerships? So what kind of time frame was it between actual certification and when you really kicked off your new endeavor?
Well, again, if I did the course in February 2014, we didn't really set up until we started talking with each other in January of this year and just having some discussions about it. But we didn't really kind of go fully fledged until I left my previous company that I was working with in April. So really we've been sort of, out there since April. But I think, and if I share my top 5, this will probably resonate with people. My top 5 are Activator, Woo, Command, Arranger, and Positivity. So having done the accreditation and really not able to use the strengths in earnest where I was with the big communications company, I used it with some diversity groups that I was working with. I used it with some graduates that I was working with, and I was actually sort of mentoring and getting involved in other diversity projects. But I still wasn't sort of doing the group workshops that I'd like to do. I wanted it to become a bigger part of my life. I then sort of moved on to a smaller learning and development company, but again, it still wasn't quite, I still wasn't able to use it in the way that I wanted to be able to use it. And I've always had a saying in life, a well-known saying, go confidently in the direction of your dreams and live the life you've always imagined. And, for me not to go out there confidently and sort of do what it was that I really wanted to do, I'd be kind of, cheating myself. So my activator was very frustrated at how long it really took, but, I'm so pleased that I did sort of, take that jump and set up in partnership with Carmen and Sue, and we're really complementary because we have such differing strengths. Neither of them are as involved at the moment, but I know that will change. But we came up with the name the Strengths Partners because not only are we partners to our clients, but we're partners with each other, but we also partner with other people. I very much have an abundance mentality. So, if there's other opportunities to, partner and share, and I know you mentioned, Carol Ann's on the call. Carol Ann, helped us with our logo. So, there's a bit of a partnership there. I think you mentioned that, Gary's on the call as well. It's been really great to meet up with Gary and sort of share things with him and, the other people that are involved in the meetup. So, the word partnership is really sort of big for me through the whole movement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fantastic. One of the things that when I think about you and your top 5, for some people, their top 5 is really their brand statement. And when I think about that, I think for you that is absolutely true. Again, you've got command, right? You have it's activator, woo, command, arranger, positivity. Have I got that right?
Activator, woo, command, arranger, positivity. Yeah, and then they are pretty solid for me. But if I think about it, I often tell people my other ones as well, because I have responsibility, I have communication, I have maximizer, individualization, and significance, and they. Yes, while my top 5 are really, really strong for me, and I think about what I'm doing, and when I'm really, I want to really focus on, the sort of strength side. That really plays to my maximizer. When I'm working with teams, that plays to my maximizer. When I'm trying to work out how I can help somebody, my individualization really comes out there. But I remember when I first did the accreditation, and you get a kind of coaching session with one of the Gallup people. She was like, wow, Charlotte, you're actually quite unique there, which I know everybody's unique with their strengths. She said, but I've never seen anybody with so many of the influencing themes, in their. I have all the influencing themes in my top 12 bar competition, which is sort of 24. So, I'm very heavy orange when you look at your little app, and I scroll down. I'm very heavy orange, and I'm not so heavy red towards the back. But yeah, I do a bit of work with branding, and it's really important to me that I'm using my own talents and strengths as a part of who I am. And I think people that know me outside of work and and in work would say, yeah, they're definitely very true to me.
If you could say one success story about from your time with the Strengths Partners that tells you this was the right choice, I'm so pleased I did this, what would that be?
Confidence is a big value for me as well. So I think, I see myself as being a fairly confident person, but it's also a big value for me. I, a little while ago, probably last year sometime, got involved in a mentoring program through Vic ICT for women. So, I'd spent pretty much all my career in technology. And it's not a particularly female present industry, and I was mentoring 3 girls through that program. And then when I was doing the strengths, I recommended that all 3 of them took the Strength Finder assessment. And one girl in particular really kind of stands out for me as a real great moment, and I'm so proud of her, because she went from being a very or a not very confident individual who, when I think about some of her strengths, were, responsibility, achiever, developer. She was really overusing her achiever and her responsibility to cause her quite, significant burnout within work. And by her, really getting into the detail, she has learner as well, so she wanted to kind of find out as much as possible. She took her full 34 and, naturally was looking at the bottom, and we were like, no, you don't look at the bottom. You be mindful of it, but let's focus on what you do have. And for her, kind of going through that journey of identifying what those strengths are, and then really starting to sort of, be able to name them for herself. Now she's aiming them in such a positive way. She's got herself a new role. She's only been into a couple of weeks, and in fact, she texted me earlier, to say that she's absolutely loving her job. So just the growth in confidence that I've seen in her has just been, yeah, absolutely, I'm doing the right thing. And she came along to every single meetup that we've had, because I arranged the meetup in Melbourne, bar the last one. And again, being a very shy person, and she's, English is not her primary language. We were in one of the meetups. We were sort of. It's not always about, sort of me talking. I wanted to get a couple of other people to share how they were living their strengths. And I said to her, look, are you happy to share? And she thought about it, and she said, yeah, I am. And God, on the day, she absolutely blew me away. I felt like a proud mother. Because she really talked about how she was using her strengths, in earnest, and I can see that she continues to, sort of every day, and is really mindful of that sort of, dialing up and dialing down, and not doing things for everybody else, but doing things for herself as well, and that she doesn't need to know, all the detail before she can kind of move on. So that's that is a real, sort of moment for me that I'm so proud of as well.
Fantastic. When you think about a client like that you've had a lot of success with, can you break it down for us a bit? What does your relationship and engagement with them look like? I mean, how often do you meet with them? What sorts of, how quickly do you move through the process of naming, claiming, and aiming their strengths? Do you give them homework? I mean, can you break it down into some granular detail so that our coaches out there who are working with clients perhaps in a new situation can understand how it's worked for you?
Sure. I mean, again, and this is possibly the individualization, but everybody is different. And as I mentioned, I had 3 people that I was mentoring, and all 3 of them did the assessment. Now, one of them, she pretty much, first session, she absolutely, she was like, that's great, yeah, she could name hers, and she'd already been aiming those. She was like, oh yeah, I've already used my, my futuristic to go and, look at what's possible here, and I was like, wow, that's pretty amazing in just one session. There was another girl who was, she had a bit of a struggle claiming her woo and her communication, so that took a bit of a longer process. Whereas the other girl, sort of was we probably met up more regularly than I have the other ones, and I leave it very much down to them. I've had mentors in my life who I've been continually sort of chasing them. And I kind of do it a bit the other way, because I think, well, sometimes, especially people who are not so confident, they probably feel like they're, intruding or, sort of taking up too much of your time. So I go to them and go, I'm here if you want to meet up, would you like to meet up this week? So I'd say on average it's been about once a month, but if there's a challenge that they're kind of like dealing with, it might be a bit more often. And what I do, again, very much differs, but depending on who I'm talking to. If somebody's a little bit more visual, I might get out the picture cards and we talk through those first. We'll always go through the report and sort of underline it and pull out what resonates for them, because I've learned where I used to read the report and I'll pull out the things that I think when it came down to it, it was always different to what that person pulled out. So I tend not to spend too much time now studying the report myself. I listen to what it is that really resonates for them, and then depending on how they're going with their own sort of naming, that I'll use perhaps the theme dynamic cards or the pairs cards. We'll look at the the strengths wheel. I tend to urge people I know some people have a school of thought on this one, but I tend to encourage people, if they ask me and go, well, look, what would you do? Would you do the 5 or the 34? I encourage people to do the 34, because I think, knowing your top 5 is really powerful, but understanding what lays beneath is also really important. And there could be things there that they could be using, or they do use on a regular basis, that's not there. So with each of them, they did their 34, and as I say, I normally encourage people to do that. And I just kind of get a feel for what works for people and what doesn't others. Some people really love the pairing statement. Some people love the this word that describes me and who am I, and then after those exercises, I always follow up with an email that, and give them their pairing statements and also, some thoughts that I've heard and captured. But again, it differs for every individual depending on how quickly they've been able to kind of name and claim them. When it comes to aiming, then I think I very much, sort of go back to thinking of the GROW model as well. I think, Anne, but for others that don't, I started off by actually doing some coaching accreditation through the Institute of Executive Coaching and Leadership. I did my level 1 and level 2 with them first. And that for me was really helpful, doing the grounding, understanding, the kind of GROW model and the questions to ask first, then came along, to the Gallup accreditation, and really just kind of got focused on that piece. So, once we're thinking about how they can, sort of name them, then we kind of go back to really getting them to think about how they can actually aim them. Does that kind of help?
Yeah, definitely. I think people like to sort of understand the time frame and how quickly do these things typically progress and that sort of thing. What's an example of some really powerful homework or some really powerful activity that you've given a client that you've seen a lot of result from?
Yeah, well, I always, in terms of homework, I think it's down to people whether they want to do it themselves. But I always encourage people to, listen to the theme Thursday for either, a theme of theirs that they really relate to, or one that they're perhaps struggling, to get to terms with. And the feedback that I've had from those have always been positive. I haven't had anybody come back and go, oh my God, well, that was useless. I had a couple of people go, oh, you didn't tell me it was that long, and I've just gobbled up all my data, but I prefix that now. And I know Jim helped me out with the Beyond Pod app, so I recommend that people kind of download that and sit and listen to it on the train, or in the car. I often bore my children when I'm in the car and I'm listening to Call to Coach. So yeah, I recommend that they use those. Some of the other things I kind of get them to think about is how they can be working together. So I always use the analogy of the piano. If you're just using one strength in isolation, dong, 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 it's only going to make one noise. Whereas when you're actually using it in combination, then you're going to start to make more beautiful music. So I often get them to think about how they can be using others in combination, and that's why I think Beyond the 5 is really powerful as well. So and something that we often do as homework, just so that we can kind of maximize the time that we have together, is when they have their 34, sort of break it off into those thirds and really start to explore what are their dominant and their supporting and their lesser talents as well, and really focus on that dominant portion. Say for me, it's probably my top 12 that I use every day, and other people it's different. And I think that needs a little bit of time to do and ponder, whereas I think when you're sitting with somebody, sometimes it's a little bit harder to go, oh my God, hang on, well, what does that mean? I've forgotten what harmony means, for instance. Whereas if they're doing that on their own, they can really sort of get into it, and then we'll cover that the next time. So whilst I meet up with people, I'd say on average a month, the girl that I was referring to whose confidence grown up, I don't know, I've probably known her a year or so now, and met up with her more regularly than I have other people. Whereas Jay, for instance, that I'm coaching through the the entrepreneur program, 1 week it might be, sort of 2 weeks, and then it might be, 3 weeks before we meet. So again, I put it very much down to them in terms of where they want to meet, but I'll be the one that will perhaps, prod and poke them and go, I'm here if you need me.
When do you talk to them about the why of strengths? When do you identify, why are we doing this? Beyond the self-discovery, how exactly do you want this to impact your work, and how do you integrate it into whatever structures or systems or processes are already there? When do you typically have that conversation with them?
Oh, I think pretty much straight away I have that kind of conversation with them, and hopefully, and I'd say the majority of the people that I've spoken to, and this will be my positivity, I'll share the positive impacts that it brings, and how, yes, ask the question about a performance review they might have had that's focused on Anne, you're not very good with numbers, you really need to go on a course and focus on Excel spreadsheets and something else. And that resonates with pretty much everybody. So straight up, I think I talk about why strengths and the benefits, and I would imagine probably just that passion and enthusiasm that I have for it, rubs off, because even people that have not necessarily come to me for coaching, I know that I've spoken about it. And I think my enthusiasm for it comes over, and they go afterwards, oh yeah, I took that Strength Finder assessment that you were speaking about, and I was like, yay, I've influenced somebody else in a positive way. So I think early on I share the why.
Yeah. Do you do any sort of measurement of the outcome of that? Once you see it impacting them, however it's impacting them within their jobs or roles, is there any sort of way you try to quantify it, or do you feel you need to do that? Is that important for a coach?
Yeah, no, I would like to do it, and interestingly enough, I'm looking forward to meeting Dion tomorrow, because I know that he uses the Q12 quite a bit, so I'd like to be able to kind of introduce using that so that I have a measurement before and after. But one thing I do always try and do is follow up with people as well and find out how it's going, and I love to hear stories of where people actually are using it, and it's not just an assessment that's gone in the drawer, and or a team workshop that, oh yeah, that was great fun. I did a team workshop recently with one of the big 4 banks, and they were already a really high performing team, which I love working with already sort of high performing teams. I think it plays to my maximizer. They already had great survey results in the recent employee engagement survey, and working with them was a really positive experience. But I followed up with one of them recently. She came to me and said, we'd like to get a couple more codes for some other people that have joined the team. And that was like, well, for me, number one, that was great that they were doing that. And I said, look, if you need help, they already had the strengths grid that I'd done for them. If you want me to add them on, happy to do that. And I said, how's it going? Oh yeah, it's great, we've got another strategic planning session coming up, and we're going to be using this. So for me, that's that in itself is a measurement, to know that I've done a workshop and got them thinking about it, and they're consciously using it on a regular basis. And some clients know that I enjoy that as well, so will copy me in on emails that they might send to the team, encouraging them to think about using their strengths. Because I think unless you're living and breathing it every day, it is a conscious effort, isn't it? So it's encouraging people to do that and making it part of their their life and their meetings. And I'll do follow-up emails as well, and go, here's a tool that you might want to consider using. Don't forget to include your grid as a part of your meeting, just so that it's fresh in people's minds.
Yeah, fantastic. Can we go back to the GROW model? For those who are not familiar with it, can you talk a bit about that?
Sure. So the GROW model is really the sort of simple coaching model, where you're really, first of all, understanding what that person's goal is, and fundamentally it's about asking those open questions. So what the goal is, what the current reality is that's going on for them, what options do they have open to them, and really get them to explore what those options are, as opposed to typically telling them what you think the options would be. And then the W is either, some people say way forward, some people say sort of wrap up. I was doing a leadership program last week, actually, whilst we weren't using strengths, they were actually using DISC. We were going through the coaching methodology and using GROW and how it really should be 80-20 talking. So, your coaching counterpart should be talking 80% of the time, and you should be talking 20% of the time. And I know certainly when I started it, and the IECL used to have us, lining up in a row and going, okay, well, where do you think you are in your coaching capability now? And you think that you might be a 6 or something in your coaching, and when it actually comes down to it, and you really have to focus on asking those open questions as opposed to telling somebody the answer. You go, ooh, okay, maybe I'm really not coaching. But it's somebody like me, high in communication. It's harder to shut me up sometimes, but I really have to be mindful and go, no, hang on, step back, think of the questions that you could be asking.
Yeah. So I know you've coached different sorts, entrepreneurs, leaders, a lot of women in leadership. What about youth and children? Have you done any coaching around that?
My own 2 boys have taken the Strengths Explorer. The older one, I think, has kind of got it more. I'd say that's probably the only youth that I've coached. I've worked with some graduates, and now whether you'd class those as youth, I'm not sure. It's an area that I really want to get into, sort of once we start expanding out personal branding, and breaking into some of the schools is something that I'd like to do more of. So helping people shape their future and their personal identity early on. If I'd known, or if this had been around when I was younger, I wonder how my life may or may not have sort of turned out differently. I might have been able to not use my command in a way, in a immature way, or my activator in such a an immature way. So being able to give that to younger people, I think, is a real gift. So it's not an area that I've worked in that much yet, but something else that I'd like to expand out to. I got to try and sort of make sure that I can walk before I try running. So I want to kind of focus on certain things first, and then look at that.
Yeah, fair enough. How's it gone in your family? I mean, how's the coaching gone with your children and your husband?
Yeah, well, the husband's an interesting one, actually. I don't dare coach my husband. He's done NLP and I've done this, and he tries to use NLP on me, and he goes, "You try to coach me now." I know that one of the other coaches that works for Verizon, I think Beck, she's done a team workshop with his team that he works in now. And there's actually another guy who introduced me to Strengths, many years ago, Brian, who I've recommended my husband actually speaks to. So yeah, I think we've been together a long time, and I don't know, it's just one that I've not coached him. We should do like this swap thing, I reckon. I reckon there's probably other people that go, yeah, I found my husband a little bit wife harder to coach, so maybe we should have a bit of a coaching swap group for your spouses. But the kids, really good, especially the older one. He really uses his, and if anything, he reminds me, goes, well, don't forget, Mum, I'm very much about, sort of looking into the future. So, it's being mindful of that. I can't wait to kind of, when he, can do the next one, to really look at it. I reckon he's going to have some similar qualities to me, so it's going to be interesting. I really want to get my mother as well. I keep thinking I must get my mother to do the assessment, because I'd love to see, what of hers I might have picked up, and what of hers I haven't. So
very good. Back to the corporate space. When you are approaching clients or potential clients and talking about the StrengthsFinder, how do you promote it, or what kind of conversations do you have with them to say, actually, when you look at the tools that are out there, I'd prefer to use StrengthsFinder over an NLP. What is it about StrengthsFinder that makes it an easy instrument for you to use? And on the heels of that, what other instruments do you couple it with? What do you think is well aligned with it that you can use together?
I think, most customers that I've spoken to, or most corporates that I've spoken to, again, depending on who it is that I'm dealing with, I'll try and get a feel for, what type of person they are, and what's going to appeal to them. So if they're more of a, analytical, statistical person, then I'll try and use the stats of why, and the, teams that are, using it are X amount more, productive or profitable. I think the language is probably one of the key things that makes it easier to understand, and that's feedback that I've had from people as well. The simplicity of the language, whereas I don't know enough of MBTI to kind of comment on it, but people go, oh, I'm an EFNG, or whereas to say that you're a relator or you're an activator is such a more simple language. I think it goes well, or how I've seen it sort of work well is where teams have already done their DISC. So DISC might be their personality, and the strengths really goes into that little bit more detail about how they think, feel, and behave. I have seen teams that have, or even individuals that know what their VIA strengths are, so the values and action strengths. And it's sometimes looking at how they align. As an example, my own top VIA strength is bravery. And I see that aligns very much to the kind of, the activator as well as the command. Command for me means more courage, having the courage to kind of like speak up. So it's using those in conjunction of, okay, well, your VIA character strength might look like this, but your Clifton Strength Finder is this is, this is how they work together. So I'd say DISC and VIA are probably the only two that I've really kind of, come across. I don't know enough about, MBTI or some of the others. I've done a bit of work with, Herman Brain, so the HBDI, the sort of, again, but that's more your thinking preferences as opposed to, thinking, feeling, and behaviour. And that's another reason why I love it, because it's, it's broader in terms of, who you are, and really doesn't change.
Any area that you see strengths needs to go? Any place where you feel strengths just hasn't reached yet, that you think is really crying out for it?
Oh, well, that's quite broad. I think whilst there's coming up 13 million people, I would like to be able to have an impact of that touch more people when I post things like the new meetups that we're having. A lot of people go, oh, what's Gallup? So I want, when you talk to somebody about an assessment tool, that people have instantly heard of the Gallup-Strengths Finder, the Clifton Strength Finder tool. I think it still has a big part to play within corporates. I think it still does have a big part to play sort of within schools. So yeah, I think they're the two areas that I'd like to focus on. I mean, I do a lot of work within the sort of gender diversity groups. And as I mentioned before, around the sort of helping women with their confidence as well, and I think this is such a positive one to look at using that. So I'd like to do more to make it more well known.
Charlotte, you were very bold, and you used, as you say, your top 5 in a powerful way to start the Strengths Meetup in Melbourne, and you really took charge with that, and it went up to very quickly like 117 members. I remember getting the email from you very shortly after that. At least from where I sit, it seemed like it all happened very quickly. But I know that for those who are out there kind of trying to start meetups, not all of them have that sort of explosion and momentum from the beginning. Can you give some tips about how you made it work so well, and perhaps some perspective that maybe it wasn't always so easy, as easy as it seemed to be from the outside?
Yeah, I think for me, I was in the car listening to one of Jim's, call to coaches or a theme Thursday. Oh, it must have been a call to coach, and I heard him talk about it, and I heard him mention the 34 strong, guide. So I was like, oh, I wonder if there's a meetup group in Melbourne. So I kind of looked up, no meetup group in Melbourne. Okay, right. Well, I'm going to start a meetup group in Melbourne. So I, went straight on, downloaded the 34, guide, had a look. Okay, what's this meetup, tool? Created a page on there, and it was surprisingly simple. And yes, whilst I did it exactly the same day, yeah, it's really not complex to use, and I know that the Meetup tool, the Meetup tool gives you tips and guides of how to do it. I probably I wouldn't say I make it complex, but when we have a meetup, I make sure that I get people's top 5 before they come. So I print up labels. Now, that's my own choice to do that, whereas not everybody kind of like, needs to do that. But the meetup page is so easy to navigate that they do it all for you. They start to pulse it out. I use LinkedIn a lot and Facebook to kind of promote it, and I'll send it. It's got such a great sharing thing on your phone that you just click the sharing button and you can email it, text it, yammer it to people. So I share it that way. I think one of the things that I'm fortunate of is in Melbourne, one of the big 4 banks, NAB, they had this amazing space for their small customers, of which I am one, or we are one. And they had this great place called The Village where you can go and, use their desks, their hot desks, use their meeting rooms. So we hold the meetups in those meeting rooms. And they also have a Yammer community. So I posted on there as well. A number of people come from there, and I encourage other people then to share it out. So it grew really quickly. My tip to other people is just go out there and do it. And if you're not a high activator or arranger, find somebody that is and partner with them and do it together, because it really is a very simple thing to do. And I know I had a call, with somebody in the UK who was looking at setting one up, somebody else in New Zealand. So there's a couple of people that I've spoken to about how to do it, and I'm more than happy anybody to drop me an email or contact me at any time. Very happy to talk them through what we've done. I've shared copies of the presentations that we've used for it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe
do you take turns? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Jump
yeah,
in
go
real
ahead.
quick. She's saying this because we have a Meetup page dedicated to this. So if folks would go to the coach's blog, go to coaching.gallup.com, there's a Meetups tab. So if you're wondering where is there one in my city, I usually save this to the end, but it's so good to say right now as she's talking about this. And when we look at the cities, we're in Hong Kong, the Philippines, Singapore, Melbourne, and Sydney there. But in the United States, well, Toronto as well, in Canada. In the United States, we have over 25 cities we're in, but we're not everywhere. And so this is the important thing. Charlotte, thank you for saying it's not hard to do these. It's just a matter of getting folks together. I helped the group in Des Moines, Iowa, get started, where they're like, how do we do this? I'm like, get 5 people together and just start talking about things. If you can get a coach involved, that's even better, because they have 2 kits full of stuff that you can do on these. And so they're not, a lot of people think they've got to have something ready, and it's nice to have something to talk about ready, but you'd be surprised what you think will take an hour will take 3. And so if you have 15 minutes worth of conversation, it will go a full hour. It's just not that hard. We were in pre-show, we were saying, Charlotte, you asked me, how many do we have? And I think we're at about 35 now. My goal is 100 by the end of the year. And it's time for the second wave. So if you're listening to this, we'd love to have you jump on. Charlotte said she would help you. She said that publicly. She will help you do that. So if you're thinking about doing a startup, head out to our Facebook group, facebook.com/group/call-to-coach. Get in there. I have a whole Meetup section in there of everything you need to do. So enough of my commercial. Now back to the program. Previously in progress.
Well, that's what I love. That's what I love about the Strengths, is that everybody is so willing to help each other. They were the Love 34 Strong that put out that guide. I know Alex Wong in Singapore. He's been really helpful with people. So I think the whole Strengths movement is so positive and collaborative, and people sharing. So there has got to be, if you're fearful and go, oh, I can't do it on my own, there will be somebody out there that will help you. So if you go, oh, I'm thinking of doing it, post it on Facebook, and I'm sure somebody else will come along and and help you out.
And do you share it? I mean, when if I don't know if you do it monthly or what have you, but is there ever anyone else who shows up on a regular basis who says, hey, I'd like to run the next one, or I'd like to come up with a topic or do an activity? Do you spread it around?
Yeah, there's I don't know that anybody has ever said I'd like to do one, but certainly I said to Gary, Gary, would you like to do one? And he goes, yeah, I'm happy doing it. And then I promptly realised that I organised the next one. So Gary, you're down to do the next one, okay? But yeah, no, anybody that wants to share it out, can. I think for our group, there's a few of us that are Gallup accredited strength coaches. And I love it when new people kind of come on and bring the fresh insight. I don't think it should be about me talking. I love to hear from other people. I mean, certainly when I asked Alicia and Bill to share how they're living their strengths. That was great. But I know there are other coaches that come along that use strengths that are not accredited. So, that's what I get the most out of it, hearing from other people. But, some people come along and love the exercises that we do. But no, anybody else in Melbourne that wants to come along and, take part or lead one, more than happy.
Yeah, fantastic. What about any other promotional activities? I mean, what other ways do you market or promote the Strengths Partners? I mean, obviously, a meetup benefits everyone who comes along, but it also helps you be able to have, more hits on search engine optimization, all those things I don't really understand, but I know that certainly that does help improve the ranking for that. So that is a good marketing tool as well. What other marketing tools or promotional tools do you do?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I've actually got some workshops and individual coaching as a result of the meetup. So, promoting those on LinkedIn. So not only do I promote the meetups on LinkedIn, but I also, kind of have started, writing articles. I did one a couple of weeks ago on, optimists have more fun. So, using the theme of positivity. And then recently, what makes a great team. So, I use LinkedIn a lot to promote, what we do, or if not just what the Strengths Partners do, but the whole, Clifton Strength Finder movement. I do encourage more people to go to Facebook as well. I think the Call to Coach group, and the Strength Finder group is really powerful, and I love the community that's on there and the sharing and the questions that get asked. I think for me, I've started to do. I spoke at a Business Heals event, which again is a sort of women's group event recently about using your strengths to live with passion and purpose, and gave away a book and an individual coaching session there, and then I'm sort of looking at putting that out to some of the other Business Heals meetup groups. In March, we're looking at running a session with the Vic ICT Women in Technology group, again to kind of spread that out. So whenever any of these groups are being done, there was one with AmCham as well, that gets advertised through their medium to their members as well. So that kind of helps to spread the work. And I've had a couple of people come to me. There was an example recently where a guy was Googling strengths. He had taken the Strength Finder assessment, wanted to do it with his team, and he Googled, and whilst the website didn't immediately pop up, I did on LinkedIn, and he went, oh great, there's a Gallup accredited strength coach here in Melbourne. So I recommend people sort of put it on their LinkedIn as well. So I think that they would be the main ones, but I think it's keeping the activity up as well. I'm not a big Twitterer. I tried, but I think I focus on the LinkedIn and the Facebook, and then using the other mediums like Meetup.
Fantastic. Is there anything that you feel is important to talk about that I've missed, I haven't asked, or Jim, anything out there that you want to
I'll let Charlotte go first. Charlotte, go ahead.
Again, you'll have to go when I start talking too much. I did a really great team recently that I'd love to share, because I think it was quite unique, and I'd love to hear if anybody else had this. The same guy that I mentioned that Googled and went, oh great, there's a accredited coach in Melbourne. It's a Australian listed organisation, and he wanted to run it for his Australian Stock Exchange listed company. So they're a reasonably big company. He wanted to run it with his team of 23 people that were all centre managers. This company run lifestyle communities, not for not care homes, but sort of communities out there. I gave them their codes, and as the codes started to come in and I started to plot them in the grid, I was like, wow, there's another person high in responsibility here, and they just kept coming in, with very similar themes. And I was like, whoa, how unusual is this? The other very unusual thing is that out of the 23 people, 20 of them were married to each other. So they were all husband and wife couples that were running these centres, and just seeing the commonality in their themes. I think out of the 23, everybody either had relator or empathy, bar 3, and I was like, well, blimey, what's the chances of that? Not only are they married, but very strong similarity, whilst they had other balancing ones that were unique. And it really went to show that, the manager who had recruited all of them looked for something in particular, in his people. He didn't use, the Strength Finder as a selection tool, but for him, it was validation that he was recruiting the right people that were great, either relators or high in responsibility. They were very low in influencing. I think there was only 3 people that had, an influencing theme out of all of them. But they were like, well, we're fine with that because, we want people to be executing or relationship building. So again, it was another positive team experience. The funny thing was, whilst they were validating each other and go, we agree that that's my husband or wife's strength, or yes, we can see that in somebody else. When it came to the best of us exercise, that got quite interesting. You get the best of me when, you get the worst of me when. I felt a little bit like I was in a marriage guidance counselling session at one point, but it was, it was fine. It was all positive. So, that was quite a unique and interesting experience for me, and I'd love to be able to follow up with those guys as well, to see how it's going. But it was like, wow, to have so many married couples, but people that actually work together as well in a whole team.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Charlotte, I'll ask you this question. Anything unique to Australia, and we'll throw New Zealand in there as well. Australia, New Zealand, unique from a strengths perspective that from a culture may just be something you have to overcome, or if you could change about the culture with strengths that we need to work on changing to get better adoption?
There's nothing I'd change about the Australian culture. The Australians are gorgeous, and I love living here, of course. This is right. The weather's
all
lovely.
Kind and nice to each other.
Yeah. I think
was that the Canadians? Maybe I was.
The Australians as well. I think it would be just kind of getting it out there and spreading the word that Gallup is or the Clifton Strength Finder is a great tool to be able to use, as individuals and teams. So no, I don't think there's anything that kind of gets in the way. I mean, Anne, I think you quoted the stat, didn't you, that Australia has the most coaches per capita than anywhere else in the world. Was that you?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So I actually came from IECL. That's where I got that stat. Yeah.
So I think, for me, with the abundance mentality and the partnership mentality, and I know I assisted Claire last week speaking at an IECL event, I think the more coaches are using this tool, then the better. And I always recommend that people have a chat with you, Anne, and, think about coming on the course. And I see the courses come up and I go, I want to go again, let me come again on the accreditation. So, no, I think it's just a case of spreading the word. I'd like to be the Paul Allen of Australia.
Ooh, there you go. That's good, something to aspire to. And we should say, for folks who don't know you, how does a Yankee end up doing in Sydney, Australia, doing Called to Coach? And when people are like, hey, wait a minute, this is in Australia, she doesn't sound like she's from Australia. How does that happen?
Yeah, look, I am just very, very lucky, I guess. I've lived overseas for the last over 20 years, so left the States and worked for 10 years in Singapore, lived and worked for 10 years in Singapore, then Hong Kong, and now I've been in Australia for over 10 years. So it's been an amazing international experience. I've raised my kids, 4 kids across different countries, and it's been fantastic. But I love working for Gallup. I love sort of being somebody out here that gets to talk about what it's like to grow up in the States where Gallup is a household name. And now I'm here and I get to talk to people about it in a very real and personal way. So it's fantastic.
That's awesome. It's great to see it grow in Australia and New Zealand as well. And it'll be fun just to see it, for us to say, hey, I was in the beginning of this. Maybe 10 years from now we'll be like in the very early stages of this. We were doing these in the very beginning. And do we have any courses, as folks ask the question, what I want to get involved in this? Are there some courses coming up? How would they find out how to get involved in those?
Yeah, absolutely. December 7th to the 11th is the next course in Sydney, the Accelerated Strengths Coaching course to get certified. And you can go onto Gallup Strengths Center and just look under Strengths Courses. There's a link there, and just click on to the Sydney date in order to register for that. We also have a 2-day high performance management course, December 1st and 2nd in Sydney, and that is also fantastic. It's for managers, and it really helps to embed the strengths culture within an organization. It's a very powerful class. And then our next course will be in February, 2016. That's when we'll start back again. But that's what's coming up, and you feel free to get in touch with me or to go into Gallup Strengths Center in order to register for those.
Very good. Ann, take a second to thank Charlotte. Charlotte, I'll say thank you, but we'll let Ann do that, and then I'll close things up.
Yeah, Charlotte, it's so fantastic to have you here. Thank you for your time. I know we're both eager to experience being around Paul Allen for the next couple of days, and that will be fantastic. But we certainly appreciate your advocacy and support as a certified coach, and it's brilliant to watch how you're using your top 5 in such a powerful way to get the Strengths Partners up and running, and it's fantastic to watch it grow. So congratulations on that. And to your the rest of your partners. And thanks so much for your time today.
No worries. Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been fun, and I look forward to doing another one another time.
We will do that again, Charlotte. I'll say thanks. From the day I spoke to you first on your iPhone from a shopping center somewhere where I called you, and I think that was the first time we got a chance to talk, and you joined us for the Gallup Learning Series, and I'll say thanks for all that you're doing in Australia. Folks have questions. They can find you in our brand new coaches directory. So if you have looked at the old one and it was lacking a little bit, it's not lacking now. Instead, head over to the Gallup Strengths Center, Gallup-Strengthscenter.com. Go all the way to the bottom, and it'll say coaches directory. Click on that, and we have added all kinds of new sorts for the coaches that are there, so you can find them by region and location and all kinds of information that is out there. That's a team of mine that's been working on that, and super excited. I owe one guy a special dinner for that. I'm going to be taking him out here shortly for getting that wrapped up. So a brand new coaches directory is out there. If you haven't taken a peek at it, pop out there now, Gallup-Strengthscenter.com, and get that done. If you want to send us your questions or comments via email, send those coaching@gallup.com. You can catch the recorded audio and video. And by the way, Charlotte, you mentioned this. If the video is too much, you might live in some countries where they meter the bandwidth pretty severely, and so don't watch those on YouTube, on your phone. You can. We make all these available audio only that you can download over Wi-Fi when you're home or what have you. Much smaller versions of them, and then you can listen to them, as you're traveling and such. So we make those available. All those are available, and you can contact me if you have questions about how getting that done. Charlotte did, and I walked her through that to get it done, and there's some podcatchers, or on the iPhone you can use the podcast app to get that done. Just search Call to Coach, any of those environments, and you can subscribe to it, and then it'll download automatically, and then you never miss one of those. Speaking of that, if you haven't subscribed to that, we just did a big presentation on EP10 for entrepreneurs, and we snuck that into the Call to Coach channel. So if you're not subscribed to it, that may be one of those things you might have missed that you want to go back and catch. So go back to Call to Coach, Called to Coach, and get that subscribed to out there on any of those podcatchers. We now have some 30 global meetups. We talked about those. We're excited to push those forward. If you want to get those started, you need help, let me know as well. And don't forget, we have Android and iPhone apps available for you for streaming and offline listening, available on your mobile devices. Just get it done. We want to thank everyone for joining us today. If you enjoyed it, please share it. We look forward to the next Call to Coach. And with that, we'll say good day, everybody.